What happens when a bakery's most trusted head baker starts cutting corners behind everyone's back, and the only person who notices is a new trainee who's actually the boss? It was just past 6 a.m. when Preston Keller stepped into the 15th store of his 19-location bakery chain, this one nestled in a busy strip mall in Columbus, Ohio. He wore a worn-out hoodie, fake glasses, and a ball cap low over his brow. His beard was fuller now, streaked with gray. No one here had seen him in person. He'd bought the chain 7 years ago from a retiring family and spent most of his time at headquarters or traveling between the larger stores. This place, he'd never even stepped foot inside. He called himself Doug. Corporate had set up the fake resume, just a guy trying to learn baking, starting at the bottom. He was here because of a string of complaints. Staff turnover was high, sales were oddly flat despite the location's heavy foot traffic. But what caught Preston's attention most? A customer review claiming their favorite cinnamon roll recipe had changed, and not for the better. The store manager, a wiry man named Rick, greeted him with a half-hearted nod. "You're the new guy, right, trainee? Cool, just don't get in the way of Hank." "Hank?" Preston asked. Rick jerked a thumb toward the bakery's heart, where a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 50s worked the dough like a machine. "Head baker. Runs the back, been here longer than I have. Just follow his lead." Preston spent the first 3 hours shadowing Hank. The man worked fast, barely spoke, and barked instructions without looking up. It was hard to keep up, but Preston didn't mind. What bothered him was what he saw when Hank thought no one was watching. "Hey," Preston said quietly as he watched Hank pour something into a mixing bowl. "Is that the regular vanilla?" Hank didn't look up. "Close enough. House blend, cheaper, same difference once it's in the oven." Preston didn't respond, but it wasn't just the vanilla, the flour brand was different. The butter was thinner, almost oily, something was off. Later, while loading a batch of lemon scones into the oven, Preston heard a soft voice behind him. "You're new, right, Doug?" He turned. A young woman with curly red hair and flour-smudged glasses smiled at him. "Yeah, first day. I'm Harper Ellis. I do most of the front register and help with prepping when we're short." "Welcome." "Thanks," she hesitated. "Just a heads up. If Hank snaps at you, don't take it personal, but if you see something weird, don't ask questions. Rick won't back you." Preston looked at her. "That happen often," Harper gave a small shrug. "Let's just say we've gone through 4 trainees in the last 3 months. By closing time, Preston's feet were killing him. He sat outside on the back steps, rubbing his knee. The years were catching up to him. Harper stepped out with 2 to-go boxes. "You didn't eat all day," she said, handing one over. "I made an extra sandwich." He took it, surprised. "You didn't have to, you helped clean the oven. That's more than anyone else has done their first day," he smiled. "Thanks, Harper." "That means a lot." She hesitated. "Just be careful. Hank's not what he seems. And Rick lets him do whatever he wants. I've tried emailing corporate, but nothing changed." Preston looked down at his sandwich, something twisted in his gut, not just from the food, from guilt, shame. He was corporate, and he hadn't seen any of it. The next morning, Hank was already kneading dough when Preston walked in. Harper was prepping the glaze station. Rick sat in the office with the door closed as usual. "Doug," Hank barked. "Grab that box of cocoa powder from the shelf." Preston lifted the box. It felt too light. He flipped it open. Inside was a cheaper off-brand substitute, repackaged in the premium box. His stomach dropped. He watched quietly as Hank mixed it into the batter for the best-selling chocolate croissants. "You ever think maybe customers notice when things taste off?" Preston asked. Hank looked at him, eyes narrowing. "You new guys always got opinions." "You want to last here, keep your head down." Preston nodded slowly. "Got it." But he filed everything away, every shortcut, every ingredient swap. By day 4, he'd seen enough. That evening, he waited until the bakery was closed. Harper stayed behind to mop. Rick had already left. "Hank," Preston said, standing at the prep table, "we need to talk." Hank raised a brow. "You quitting already?" "No, I'm the owner. My name's Preston Keller." Hank froze. Harper dropped the mop. "What?" she whispered. I've been undercover all week, Preston said. And I've seen enough to know we've got a serious problem. Hank didn't speak right away. He stood there, one flour-dusted hand resting on the edge of the prep table, eyes locked on Preston as if trying to reconcile the man in front of him with the one he'd barked orders at all week. Preston waited. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to, the silence pressed down like a weight. "You're not serious," Hank finally said, voice low, almost hoarse. "I am. I own this business, every store, including this one." Harper hadn't moved, her eyes stayed fixed on the back of Hank's head. "I've seen what you're doing," Preston continued, keeping his tone level. "Switching ingredients, mislabeling product, ignoring basic prep standards. You've been cutting costs without authorization and customers are noticing." Hank stepped back, folding his arms. "It's not like anyone at the top ever cared before. Corporate sends us numbers, tells us to hit margins. I made it work." Preston's jaw tightened. "No one told you to swap out real butter for margarine. Or to fake brands by stuffing discount ingredients into premium containers. Did you ever once ask why?" Hank said, voice rising now. "This store gets the same budget as the others, but prices keep climbing. You think I enjoy doing this?" "I had to choose between layoffs and substitutions." "You chose deception," Preston said. "No one gave you permission to compromise quality, and you didn't tell anyone, you just did it." Hank looked at Harper. "Go home, kid." Preston's voice cut back in before she could move. "She stays. She's the only one who's asked the right questions." Hank shook his head slowly. "You're not going to like what happens when you fire me." "I'm not firing you," Preston said. "Not yet, but you're suspended, effective immediately. You'll receive a formal notice by tomorrow morning. If you have anything you'd like to say it now." Hank didn't answer. He untied his apron and dropped it on the table. Then he walked out without another word, the door swinging shut behind him. Harper let out a breath she'd clearly been holding. "You okay?" Preston asked. She nodded, but her hands were still clenched around the mop handle. "You're really him?" "I am." She sat on the edge of a stool, eyes not quite meeting his. "I thought maybe you were just another guy who'd quit after a week." "I almost did," Preston said. "But then I watched you keep showing up, even when no one backed you." She looked up then. "I filed 3 reports, nothing came of it. I never saw them," Preston said. "That ends now." The next morning, Preston arrived before sunrise. He unlocked the back door himself. Harper was already there, in the supply room cross-checking inventory against the digital log. "I didn't expect you this early," she said. "I wanted to see what the place looks like without Hank running it." She handed him a printed list. "We don't have enough butter for a full batch of croissants, and the flour order still hasn't come in." Preston scanned the list. "Who handles ordering?" "Rick's supposed to, but Hank did most of it through vendor backchannels. That's part of the problem. He was buying off books to save money, and Rick never asked questions." Preston walked to the office and knocked once before pushing the door open. Rick sat behind the desk, sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and blinked. "Doug, I mean Preston, right? Guess the disguise is off. I need a full accounting of every off-ledger order Hank placed in the last 6 months," Preston said, "and I want to know why you approved them." Rick set the coffee down slowly. "Look, I didn't know he was faking labels. I thought he was just negotiating better deals. You never checked. He's been here 15 years. I trusted him." Preston folded his arms. "You didn't trust your own staff enough to listen when they raised concerns." Rick opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I'm assigning an interim manager here starting tomorrow," Preston said. "You're on leave pending review. You'll get a formal notice shortly." Rick's face tightened. "You can't just walk in here and I can," Preston said, "because I own this company. And right now, I don't trust you to run this store." Rick didn't respond. He stared at the desk as Preston turned and walked out. By noon, a regional supervisor named Denise arrived to take over operations. She was direct, brisk, and had a reputation for pulling underperforming locations out of the gutter. She met with Harper first, asking detailed questions and taking notes as they walked the kitchen. Harper pointed out the mislabeled ingredient bins, the outdated prep sheets, and the shortcut steps Hank had implemented. Denise didn't sugarcoat anything. This isn't just a few bad habits, this is structural neglect. Can we fix it? Harper asked. We can, Denise said. But it means starting from zero. New inventory, new prep flow, real training, and better leadership. The team that showed up for the evening shift looked wary when they saw Preston still there. Most of them had assumed he was a temp. A young man from Dish named Caleb asked, "So like you're the actual owner?" Preston nodded. "That's right." Caleb shook his head. Thought Harper was joking. Harper didn't laugh. "I don't joke about stuff like that." One of the newer bakers, a quiet woman named Marisol, asked softly, "Are we all getting fired?" "No," Preston said. "But things are going to change fast, and I want everyone to have a chance to be heard. If you've got ideas, problems, things you've seen, tell Denise. We're rebuilding this store from the inside out." They nodded, uncertain but listening. That night, as they cleaned up, Harper pulled him aside. "I've got an idea," she said. "If we're short on ingredients, maybe we cut back the menu for a few days. Focus on the core stuff. Croissants, scones, cinnamon rolls. Make sure they're perfect." Preston nodded. "That's a smart call. Can you lead the prep for that tomorrow morning?" She hesitated. "You want me to run it?" "I trust your judgment more than anyone else here right now." She gave a small nod. "Okay. I'll be here at 4. Preston stayed behind after closing, sitting alone in the office, listening to the hum of the refrigeration units and the distant clatter of dishes being stacked. He logged into the internal reporting system and pulled up the store's complaint history. Harper's name came up 3 times, all marked as resolved. None had been escalated. He sat back in the chair, staring at the screen. Whatever came next, it was going to take more than fixing recipes or firing a baker. It was time to rebuild the system that let this happen in the first place. The next morning, the air outside hung damp and heavy, dew clinging to the glass as streetlights flickered out one by one. Preston unlocked the front door a few minutes after 4. Harper was already inside, sleeves rolled to her elbows, unpacking crates of fresh dairy that had finally arrived late the night before. A clipboard rested on the prep table beside her, and a series of clean trays were already lined up in neat rows. "We're doing 6 batches of croissants," she said without looking up. 3 cinnamon, 2 plain, 1 almond. I tested a new proofing time last night, should hold better with the real butter." Preston stepped beside her, glancing at the dough she'd portioned. The shape was tighter, more uniform. It already looked better than anything he'd seen earlier that week. "You're the first person I've seen here who actually leads with action," he said. Harper glanced up, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been waiting a long time for the chance." By 6, the store lights flickered on, and Denise arrived with a revised floor plan. She handed Preston a copy before turning to Harper. "Can you walk me through how you want the shift to flow?" she asked. Harper pointed to the schedule. "Caleb's on dish, but he's got some experience with prep, so I want to rotate him between batches during downtime. Marisol can do glaze and front counter. I'll handle proofing and finish work." Preston watched silently as Denise nodded, made a few adjustments, and handed it back. No objections. No corrections. Just trust. 15 minutes later, the first real test walked through the door. A woman in her 60s approached the counter with deliberate steps. She wore a navy windbreaker, and her expression was unreadable until she reached the register. "You changed the cinnamon roll last month," she said, locking eyes with Marisol. "Tasted like something off a shelf. I've been coming here for 8 years. If it's the same today, I'm done." Marisol glanced back at Harper, then nodded. "Would you be willing to try one from the new batch?" "On the house, we've made changes." The woman raised an eyebrow but slid into a seat by the window. Harper plated a roll herself. She placed it on a ceramic dish, added a small note card with the bake time and ingredients, and carried it over. A few minutes passed. The woman took a bite, paused, and then folded the note card neatly in half. She stood, approached the counter again, and said, "That's what it used to taste like." Then she pulled out her wallet and ordered 3 more. That afternoon, Preston stepped into the back office to check on the status of Rick's formal review. Denise was already on the phone with HR, listing the specific documentation failures and oversight gaps under his management. She didn't hesitate, didn't pad her language, and didn't look for excuses. When she hung up, she turned to Preston. "Terminations in motion. Too many ignored warnings, too little oversight." "Good," Preston said. "I want this store to set a new bar, not just catch up." Denise leaned back slightly. "There's one other thing. Payroll data shows Harper's been clocking out before her actual shift ends. She's averaged over 15 unpaid hours a month." Preston stood still for a moment before responding. "She never mentioned it. She probably knew it wouldn't matter here, make it right," Preston said. "Retroactive pay, and raise her base rate. She's operating like an assistant manager without the title." Denise nodded and began drafting the adjustment order. Later that evening, Preston sat on a crate in dry storage, going through vendor contracts on his tablet when Caleb walked in, wiping his hands on his apron. "I heard about Rick," he said. "Is he really gone?" "He's not coming back." Caleb leaned against the doorframe. "I didn't mind him." But he never listened. "When we ran out of gloves last month, he told me to just rinse between batches. I got a burn from the sanitizer, still have the mark." He pulled up his sleeve. A pink scar ran across his wrist, faint but clearly chemical. Preston's voice dropped. "You reported that to Hank. He said it wasn't a priority, told me if I couldn't handle the kitchen, maybe I wasn't cut out for food service." "Did you ever go to a doctor?" Caleb shook his head. "I want you to take a full break right now. Go sit down, get some water. And we'll schedule you for a proper checkup. Company covered." Caleb's eyes flickered. He nodded once and left quietly. Around 5, a delivery truck arrived. The driver, an older man with a clipboard and a missing front tooth, handed Harper a manifest. "I'm supposed to be dropping off flour and oils, but someone's been cutting the order in half here for months," he said, scratching his chin. "Said to reroute the rest to another location. You folks changing that?" Harper blinked. "Who gave that instruction?" "Man with a beard, big guy. Always signed off in pen." Preston stepped into view. "Going forward, nothing gets rerouted, full orders only. I'll send you a signed update." The driver nodded. "Figures. This place used to order like a ghost kitchen, half full, always scrambling." By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the smell of fresh pastries filled the entire store. Customers were lingering longer, asking questions, leaving with full boxes, not just a single item. Harper stood behind the counter, restocking the display with careful precision. Her hands moved quickly but with purpose, every item placed with intent. Preston approached and leaned on the edge of the counter. "You ever think about running your own place?" he asked. She looked up at him, surprised. "Never had the chance to." "What would it look like?" "Small, maybe 10 tables, everything made from scratch, no shortcuts. And I'd hire people who actually want to be there, not just fill spots." "You're already doing most of that now." She gave a small nod. "But the second you leave, someone like Hank could walk back in." "No," Preston said. "Not anymore." He pulled a small folder from his coat pocket and slid it across the counter. Inside was an offer letter. Full-time bakery operations lead with benefits, bonus eligibility, and a path toward co-managing product development across the region. Harper stared at it for a long moment. "You don't have to say yes now," Preston added. "But I want you to know I'm not just fixing a store. I'm building something better, and I need people who think like you to help lead it." She didn't reply right away. She picked up the folder, glanced over the first page, and then closed it. "I'll be here at 4 tomorrow," she said. That night, Preston stayed after close again. He walked the space alone, pausing at the prep station, the oven, the register. Everything was cleaner, quieter, but it wasn't just about the equipment, it was the people who'd been stepped over, ignored, and still showed up. He opened his laptop and began drafting a new company-wide policy. All product substitutions must be approved in writing. All ingredient changes must be disclosed. Anonymous staff feedback would be reviewed by a third-party team, and any reports of injury, discrimination, or retaliation. Zero tolerance. Immediate action. He saved the draft, then he looked at the clock. It was already past 9. Tomorrow he'd visit the next store, but first he'd be back here at 4. Right where it started, 2 weeks passed. The Columbus bakery had shifted, not dramatically but steadily. The changes were visible in pace and posture. Employees moved with more certainty. Harper's prep team followed a new flow she'd sketched herself on recycled parchment. Denise returned every 3 days to monitor progress and meet with each employee individually, not in groups Preston's instruction. Preston had kept to the background since his reveal. No more hoodies or aliases, just a clipboard, a plain navy apron, and tired eyes. He didn't issue orders anymore. He watched, he asked, and when necessary, he acted. On a Thursday morning, Harper stepped into the office, quietly but not hesitantly. "The vendor from Greenfield called," she said, setting down a small notepad. "They said Hank still has access to their standing order system. He tried to redirect a dairy shipment this morning." "Use the old store code." Preston didn't look up right away. He finished typing a note on his laptop, then closed it gently. "I'll handle it." He dialed the vendor directly. His voice was calm but clipped. "This is Preston Keller. Cancel any requests not submitted through our new system. Effective immediately. And revoke all individual access unless cleared by Denise Martinez or myself." He hung up, then made another call. Legal team. They'd already begun formal proceedings. This confirmed the need to accelerate. When he stepped out of the office, Harper was still waiting, arms folded. "You think he's trying to retaliate?" she asked. "I think he doesn't like being held accountable. He used to say this place wouldn't last a month without him." Preston looked around. Caleb was wiping down the counters. Marisol was boxing a custom order. 2 trainees Harper had helped onboard were shadowing her on dough forming. "It's already lasted longer," he said. That evening, Preston met with the full team in the break room. The air smelled faintly of yeast and citrus, the last batch of lemon loaves having just finished. He stood by the whiteboard, arms loose at his sides. "I want to talk about permanence," he said. "Not temporary fixes, not band-aids. What we're doing here is meant to last." Caleb leaned forward slightly. "Is this about the new inventory system?" "That's part of it," Preston said. "Starting next week, each location will have access to full sourcing transparency. Every employee will know exactly what's being used, where it's from, and how it compares to standards." Marisol looked up from her notepad. "For us too, not just managers. For everyone. If you're baking it, you deserve to know what's in it." Harper rested a hand on the table. "What about the other stores, the ones we're not seeing?" "They'll get their own assessments," Preston said. "Some will get surprise audits, others will have someone like me walk in without a name badge." Caleb grinned. "You're going to keep doing that." "I have to," Preston said. "Because this only works if no one thinks they are above being watched." A quiet murmur of approval passed through the room. The next morning, Denise returned with someone new. A slim woman in her 40s, dark blazer, clipboard, and a posture that didn't invite questions. "This is Audrey," Denise said. "She's from HR Compliance, here to close the loop on the Rick investigation." Preston gave a small nod. He stepped back to let Audrey take the lead. She didn't waste time. She met with each employee privately. Asked about scheduling practices, equipment safety, wage accuracy, and any pressure they'd felt to stay silent when things were wrong. When she met with Harper, she asked only one question beyond the standard form. "Why did you stay?" Harper looked down at her hands, then back up. "Because someone had to." Audrey wrote that down, word for word. By noon, Rick's termination was finalized. Audrey delivered the final documentation to Preston, then left without ceremony. After she was gone, Denise sat with Preston in the office, legs crossed, reviewing the last of the week's updates. "What's your next move?" she asked. Preston looked at the wall where Harper had pinned hand-drawn diagrams of prep line efficiency. "I'm making Harper assistant product lead." Permanent. Once she's ready, she'll train others. She's ready now, he nodded once. Then we'll go faster. Harper's official promotion was announced the next morning. There were no speeches. She didn't want one, just a short team huddle and a new nameplate above the clipboard station. Later, Preston pulled her aside. "There's one more thing," he said. "I want to pilot a mentorship program, trainees being taught by people who have actually worked every station just like you did." She raised an eyebrow. "Across all stores, eventually." "But it starts here," Harper thought for a moment. "Then I want Caleb to be next." Preston didn't question it. "You'll build the framework." 3 days later, Caleb was given his own test batch schedule. Harper stood by as he led the morning prep. She didn't do it for him. She corrected once, then let him solve the rest. That evening, a customer stopped Preston near the door, a man in his 30s, young daughter on his hip. "You own this place, right?" the man asked. "I do. Cinnamon rolls are exactly like I remember them. Haven't had them this good in years." "Whatever you did, thanks." Preston offered a quiet nod. "I didn't do it alone." The man smiled and walked out. As the door closed, Harper approached from the side, wiping her hands on a towel. "I saw you talking to the guy with the kid." He remembered the old recipe. She nodded once. "So did I." Preston studied her for a moment. "You ever wonder how it got this bad without anyone noticing?" She didn't answer right away. "Then, people get used to silence. It's easier than confrontation." "Not for you." "I tried. Then I stopped." "Then I started again." He glanced toward the kitchen. "You think we'll hold this line?" "We better," she said. "Because if we don't, people like Hank come right back in." Preston exhaled slowly, then walked toward the back office. Before he reached the door, he turned. "You're not just part of the recovery, Harper," he said. "You're part of the future." She didn't say thank you, just gave a single, short nod. That night, Preston stayed after close and wrote one final memo for the executive team. It included 3 mandates. 1. All store-level complaints must bypass local management if not resolved in 48 hours. 2. All ingredient changes require written regional approval with visible signage for customers. And 3. Any retaliation against whistleblowers, regardless of role or tenure, results in immediate termination. No exceptions, no warnings. He hit send. Then he closed the laptop, turned off the light, and walked through the quiet store one last time. The trays were clean. The proofers were empty. The flour bins were labeled, sealed, and accurate. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that finally was enough.